Welcome to the Breech Birth podcast. I'm Sasha Hopkins, private midwife, breech birth educator, and your host. This is a space to hear the real, raw, and powerful stories of women who have experienced breech birth in all its layers. Each episode features honest conversations with women who've experienced breech firsthand, offering insight and reflection. This podcast was born from the knowing that these stories need to be heard to inform, connect, and reclaim the story of breech birth. Whether you're navigating breech birth yourself, supporting others, or simply curious, welcome and thank you. The Breech Birth podcast is independently created and produced. If you'd like to support the continuation of this space, you can do so through Buy Me a Coffee. Your support helps keep these stories being shared and accessible to women and families around the world, and you can find the link in the show notes. Thank you for being a part of this community. Hi, Rose. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Before we start, let's jump into our context questions. Can you tell me where you are located?
In Adelaide, South Australia.
And what year was your baby born?
2007. She's just turned 18.
Exciting. And how many weeks were you when you had her?
She was born on her due date.
Beautiful. And what kind of care did you receive?
A private midwife.
Yep. And you had a vaginal birth?
Yep.
Was that a home birth or a hospital birth?
Yeah, home.
Home birth? Yep. And before you jump into your story, do you want to share just a little bit of a snapshot about yourself for our listeners?
Yep. So I am a midwife. I've been a midwife since 2005. I'm now the mother of 3 teenage daughters. They were all born at home, all very different experiences. And I continue to support women and birthing people in an array of ways, and breech birth and facilitating women who have a breech baby on board is a big part of what I continue to offer.
Amazing. All right. So your story, do you want to start right from the beginning? Was your pregnancy planned? I know that's 18 years ago now. What did that pregnancy look like?
So I was already a midwife before I got pregnant. I had been a midwife for a year before I moved to New Zealand to work and practice over there. And it was whilst I was over there that we got pregnant, not planned, but also a lovely surprise. So whilst I was over there, I was having some care with my colleagues and moved back to Australia when I was 34 weeks to have her in Australia. And I knew from the start that I was absolutely going to have private midwifery care. That was always what I wanted. The midwife who I knew back in Australia wasn't available at the time, but she recommended another highly experienced midwife who was new to South Australia. So I booked her. So I had my care provider organised for when I returned to Australia.
Did you book her like early in pregnancy?
Yeah.
Okay.
I booked her early. I think in my early pregnancy, I came over for a visit and we caught up, had a chat, and I was like, yep, great, this is all good. And we just, kept in touch and resumed care once I moved back at 34 weeks.
And what was your pregnancy like? Did you get nausea? Did you have ultrasounds?
Look, it was pretty good. I was still able to work full-time on call attending births. Not easy, but it was okay. Just the usual pregnancy things. I had lots of acupuncture in my pregnancy, which was fabulous. I did not have any ultrasounds. I had some blood tests where required, but chose not to have ultrasounds initially. I did at the end have an ultrasound, which will be part of my story I'll get to. But I had a great pregnancy, no real issues. Moving country when you're 34 weeks, don't recommend that. That was a significant stress, which in hindsight, don't recommend. Yeah.
And so at what point did you find out the baby was breech, in New Zealand or Australia?
So it was when we had moved to Australia. So 34 weeks, had first appointment with my midwife. She had sort of thought, is it maybe not, but only 34 weeks. So we didn't put too much stress on it. And then it was at our 36-week appointment. She was like, your baby is definitely breech. My midwife was very experienced and trained in the UK where they attend breech births regularly as midwives. And she was confident it was breech. And I actually had a suspicion for a while, but I think I was just ignoring it. I was lucky enough when I was back in New Zealand to attend Maggie Banks' workshop. She's a well-known midwife in New Zealand who does breech birth. So I was at her little hut on her property, and the beautiful room where we were was just surrounded by breech photos, pictures of breech babies. And whenever I was visualizing my baby in my birth, I kept visualizing breech. but I sort of dismissed it as, oh, I've just been surrounded by Breech. That's all it is. But it's just every time I visualized my birth, she was Breech. Yeah. So we picked up at 36 weeks and, thought, what do we do? Do we have an ultrasound to confirm? Do we have a chat with the hospital? We went over all of our options, and an elective cesarean for me was not an option. And this, in 2007, this was not long after the term breech trial had come out, which was recommending everyone have elective cesarean. We now know the study was so flawed, but it was, what we had at the time, but it just never ever felt right to me that elective cesarean was an option. So my midwife on Doppler heard a bit of a funny ectopic heartbeat with the baby. So we decided to go into hospital just to have an ultrasound because I hadn't had any scans at that point. So we thought it wise to make sure everything was okay there. So we went into my local tertiary hospital. Very fortunate that we had an amazing OB on that day who is supportive of breeches and twins and all sorts. He was fabulous. And the scan was all clear, so there was no problems with her heart. It was just a normal ectopic beat that would resolve. He was very supportive of vaginal breech birth, not at home though. He said, I would highly encourage you to birth your baby in hospital, but the issue being there was no one there who would support it or had the skills to support a vaginal breech except for him. And of course, he can't guarantee that he will be on call. So my options really were at that stage to birth in hospital and run the risk of an unskilled practitioner attending a vaginal breech birth, or continue with my home birth plan with my midwife, who was very skilled at breech birth, probably attended more breech births than a lot of the doctors in the hospital at that time. And I really just sort of the next couple of weeks just sat with my options, and I really truly tried everything to turn her as well. I look back and I think, God, like the things that I tried. It was, on the slant board, I had the ice packs, I had torches, I was telling her to move. Like it was in hindsight outrageous, the things I was trying. And it sort of wasn't until that I think I really just really quietly sat within myself and thought, what is the important thing? What is my baby telling me? And when I was really able to tune in, I just had this beautiful sense of peace and calm, and that everything was going to be okay. I just had this real inner knowing that everything was going to be okay. So once I had decided that I was going to continue with my home birth plan, I also decided to just stop doing all the things and accept that this is where she was going to be. She'd chosen, and this is where she was going to be.
Surrendered. Beautiful.
Yeah. Easier said than done, but that's what I had to do. Yeah.
And so were you still that 36-week mark, or did you need some time before you got to that point and made that decision?
I would have been probably closer to 38 weeks. Yeah, it was a good couple of weeks of trying lots of things. And, I was lucky that I wasn't working. It was my first child, so I did have that ability to go inwards and just sit with it all. I'm really lucky that my midwife was so encouraging and supportive that we, of course, we went over the risks and the pros and the cons, but also, trying to normalize it somewhat, because this was back in 2007. So we didn't have social media and able just to look at birth videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
So she had a photo album with birth photos of a mum who she'd recently had a breech home birth with, and she was a first time mum as well. And that just gave me so much confidence, like, real people do this. This is not just me. I'm not crazy. This is a real valid option. And if she can do it, so can I. So that, seeing the photos, I'm a visual learner, I'm a midwife. So I really valued seeing photos of the process as well. So that was really helpful in allowing me to just be at peace with my decision and move forward in a confident way where I didn't anymore think, oh, my baby's breech. It was just like, okay, we're going to have a baby at some stage.
Yeah. Great. Love that. So how did labour start?
Yeah, so it was the night before my due date, and my best friend had come over for a visit. We literally grew up together, so we were like sisters. And in hindsight, I was getting some back pain, but I just completely dismissed it, thought this is just normal pregnancy niggles. But my best friend obviously knew something was up, and she would not leave me alone. She said, I'm not leaving you until your partner's home. So she walked me outside, and as we walked out, it was a full moon. I could see the full moon rising on the horizon, and it dawned on me that the next day was my due date. And the back pain was starting to increase, and I just had this moment of maybe maybe this could be something. And sure enough, that just, those little back pain and some cramps continued in the early evening. Decided to go to bed early at about 9 o'clock, just with a hot pack. But things very quickly ramped up. It was very clear I was not getting any sleep. And by about 10 p.m., I was like, okay, this is very much labor and I'm not sleeping. But I continued to lay in bed, and then I'd get a contraction. I'd come up onto my hands and knees, and then I'd lay down. I let my partner stay asleep, and I just really tried to ignore it as much as possible, take my own midwife advice, and just ignorance is bliss for as long as possible. And so I felt good. I didn't need anything. I didn't need anyone. I was aware that my midwife had just gotten to bed from a 2-day birth of a friend. So I also didn't want to call her too early, but I really didn't feel like I needed to call anyone. So I was probably doing that for a couple of hours before I had to get out of bed. So I just set up a little mattress next to my bed, and I'd just be leaning forward for a contraction and sort of laying on my side in between. And again, I just stayed there doing that for quite a long time. And then I started to get a lot of pressure, like not in my bottom, just like a lot of pressure. And I had a sense that, okay, I think maybe my water's going to break soon. And that's when I got my partner up and I was like, okay, I might need a bit of help here. I put my TENS machine on, which was absolutely phenomenal. Like it just helped so much. So TENS machine on, and we waterproofed underneath where I was, but was still just sort of on my hands and knees next to my bed. And sure enough, not long after, my waters went, and it was actually such a relief, like having that pressure gone. It really intensified things, but it made them feel a little bit better. So I was probably, another hour or two there, and it really started to ramp up. So I went and sat on the toilet dilation station, and that got really intense. I had a few moments of dropping my bundle. I was sure the TENS machine was not doing anything anymore. So I ripped it off and I threw it on the ground. I was like, this is not helping. And I had one contraction without it and scrambled very quickly to put it back on because I realized just how much it was doing. So again, I was still feeling fine. I was, lots of waters were leaking out. I hadn't even called my midwife at this stage because I just didn't feel like I needed anything. I didn't need anyone. I didn't need anything. I was coping. I was just doing it. It just felt very normal, and it didn't once cross my mind, oh, your baby's breech. So after that, my partner moved me out into the lounge room where we had, bean bags and things set up. And he was sort of a bit like, do you think we should call the midwife? And I was like, no, I'm fine. And then I said, why don't you call my other support friend who was also a midwife? Call her. She'll come. That's fine. And so he called her, and it was at that stage that it started to feel different for me. This is still not many hours in, like really quickly. I was like, this feels different. And I think my midwife friend on the other end was like, is that Rose? I think you need to call the midwife, because I was starting to push. So she was on her way, but she was some time away. And then my partner called my midwife to come over. So she was on her way, but also about 45 minutes away. And very quickly I was like, okay, I'm pushing already. This is happening incredibly fast. So that was, only about 4 hours. I remember pushing again. I just felt so calm. It didn't cross my mind that she was breech. It was just, I'm having a baby. We were set up in the lounge room. I was kneeling over bean bags, and we just had the mattress underneath. And I was just following my body, just pushing when I needed to, not overthinking it. But there was the moment where you just think, oh my God, maybe we could go to hospital. Maybe I could have a forceps. That would be nice, because this is intense. You're rationalize in your mind, but that moment passed quite quickly. And I still remember when my midwife arrived, I just heard her voice, and it was just this, I wasn't not calm, but as soon as she arrived, I was like, oh, okay, she's here. It was just beautiful. Just let go. And I was like, okay, this is really, truly let go. So by the time she arrived, there was a foot out. So my baby was not footling. She was in a complete. So she had like little yoga legs, so bum presenting and legs crossed over. And and she had the little drop foot come down. So the little foot came down, and probably for me, what was the most challenging part was, maybe this is just because I'm a midwife as well. As she was birthing, felt very what I call bitsy. A leg would flop out and then another leg would flop out, and it just didn't have that smooth feeling. So I really needed my midwife to verbalize to me what's happening. Just tell me what's happening, because it felt very strange. So yeah, she came out one leg down, and then she was still one leg in, and then that second leg came out quite quickly. So she was born up to her belly button, and I just continued to push how I needed to. I didn't really need much guidance from my midwife. I just pushed. And then she was born up to her belly button, and very quickly an elbow, another elbow, and then there wasn't even a pause for her head. She just fell out and no one caught her. It was so fast, and she just plopped onto the mattress, came out crying, screaming, and straight into my arms. So there was no time for anything. And it was, I assume, it was the same for my breech birth and my head down birth. That sense of accomplishment is just, wild. But then when it dawned on me, you just had a breech birth, like that just felt extra, like extra gold star.
Yeah. Especially as a midwife.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really amazing. And it just, it was that moment where I just went, my baby was telling me it was going to be okay, and it was okay. I just had that real sense of calm, and yeah, so it was amazing. She came out, she had her legs up here
And so you said she cried pretty much straight away, didn't need any
straight away.
stimulation? Yeah,
No,
great.
really, really quickly, straight into my arms. Yeah, did not need anything.
Nice.
Yeah, it was very quick. I think it was maybe like 2 minutes from a foot to out. So yeah, very quick for a first time.
And I'm so glad that you've explained the presentation correctly, because unfortunately it does get mislabeled when you see a foot. They instantly label it as a footling, but being term, if we're
Yeah,
going on hip flexion and knee flexion or extension, then yes, it was a complete with dropped foot or feet.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm assuming you had that skin to skin
Yeah,
time. And did you birth the placenta? What did that look like?
yeah. So obviously kept the cord intact for, I don't even remember how long, a good length of time after the placenta was born. So don't remember timing of the placenta, but it wasn't long. It must have been within that hour. Just sort of knelt up and pushed the placenta out. That was no problems. Yeah, and then we just snuggled on the couch. She had her first breastfeed. I do remember my midwife checking her hips as well, just to make sure initially that they were all okay and they felt fine. And they continued to be fine. She didn't have any hip issues. Yeah. So it was just all very, what we call, boringly normal.
Love it.
I just had a baby. Yeah.
And did you breastfeed?
Yes, I did. We had a lot of breastfeeding issues, unfortunately, though. Now that I know what we know now, she had lip tie, tongue tie, and a really high palate.
Yeah.
But in 2007, there really wasn't much knowledge or information around that. So we struggled quite a lot. I did struggle with the adjustment to being a mum. I don't think I was really expecting that. Didn't have a good relationship with my mum, nor an amazing childhood. I think that's where that hyper independence comes from. So that adjustment was actually quite challenging. And it was in those moments that I was so incredibly grateful again for having my private midwife. Like, I remember one night I literally could not get my baby attached to the breast. She was hysterical. I was hysterical. I just could not attach her. And she came at midnight to help. I don't know what she was going to do, but she just came because we were all an absolute mess. So it was in those times that, that care was just, invaluable.
Yeah. And did you pursue with the breastfeeding?
No, we even went into a local inpatient facility we have here just to help with that, and just really couldn't get her attached. So I ended up expressing and bottle feeding, which
Isn't hard.
it's really hard.
Yeah.
But that's our journey.
Yeah. How long
Yeah.
did you manage to do that for?
I think about 7 months. She wasn't a great sleeper either. So, that was what I managed. Of course, I wanted longer, but,
7 months is amazing.
yeah, it's hard. It's a lot of work, and you get so much more empathy and understanding for women going through challenges as well.
Mm.
Although I had those moments of I can birth my breech baby, but I can't breastfeed my baby. It's just, so I struggled with that a little bit as well. I'm a midwife. I should know how to do this. Why can't I feed my baby?
Yeah.
So, you go through all of this stuff whilst trying to adjust to being a mum and parenting. And yeah, it was a lot.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
With your preparation for Breech, besides that whole letting go, it was just the photo book that you could get resources from at that point? Like
Yeah.
the photo album?
I did have Maggie Banks's Breech Birth Wise Woman, her book. I think that was about it. There really wasn't much. So it was really relying on information from my care provider, my midwife, and from the obstetrician we saw in the hospital, who did provide good information.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. So it was very different to now.
Yeah, it's a lot now, which is great.
Yeah.
Knowing that women listening to your story now potentially have a breech baby on board, what would be words of advice or wisdom that you'd like to tell them?
I think the most important thing is having the right care provider for the type of birth you want. If you want a physiological breech birth, you need a care provider who will be able to support you in that and truly believe in your ability, because most of the time, breech babies don't need a lot, but when they do, you need a care provider who knows what they're doing in a safe manner. The last thing you need is panic and fear in the room with any birth, especially a breech birth. So choosing your care provider well, even if that means changing, if you truly want that physiological birth, then find someone that will support you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
It was beautiful and nice to get a snapshot of a breech birth from 2007, because a lot of the interviews are more recent. So it's nice to hear something beautiful and positive, particularly being soon after the term breech trial as well.
And it was quite interesting when I was in my final year of uni, when we had to do our research. So I was the first group to do the Bachelor of Midwifery, and our research project, we had to choose a complexity topic, and I chose breech. So I was all over the Hannah trial. My two nephews were both born breech as well, cesarean. So it just feels like there's just been breech around me. And my next two babies were breech until they turned on their own at 37 and 38 weeks. So there's a lot of breech.
But there's a genetic thing going on in your family, potentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you do anything for your second two to try and turn them, or they just did it on their own?
Just chiropractic care, but they turned on their own. Yeah, I think because I'd had a breech birth before, I wasn't so keen on an ECV. Each time didn't feel right for me because I felt safe and confident in a physiological breech birth. But I appreciate that can be a really good option for a lot of people who aren't in that same situation. And I think, that's also what's led me into offering the breech release clinic that I do, is trying to look at a woman and her whole body. Like, why is this baby breech? And especially with modern day stress and lifestyle, a lot of the time there is a reason. There's tension and there's imbalance, and trying to work on that, because that's always going to have a positive effect on that woman's body regardless. Even if it's not enough to help baby turn, it's always going to be of benefit.
So the breech release clinic, do you want to share a little bit about that? I'm sure there'll be women interested to hear a bit more. I'm interested to hear a bit more.
So I do sessions really tailored to each woman's presentation, but it's really a series of using acuneedling as well as manual release techniques. So externally balancing different, muscles, fascia muscles, ligaments, from taking a whole body approach. So we're releasing diaphragm, we're releasing the abdomen, we're releasing the psoas, we're releasing, the back. So trying to work out, why is this baby breech? Is there a reason? And can we facilitate softening and opening so the baby can turn more easily? Sometimes babies will turn on their own a couple of days later. Sometimes people will still have an ECV, but a lot of the time the ECVs are really easy and straightforward. But sometimes babies just do not move. That's their chosen path. Yeah.
And so, just for those listening, you're in Adelaide. How would they find you if they have a breech baby and they want to have a go at this?
My business is Serene Women's Services, and probably the biggest thing I can't stress enough is, please don't leave it until the last minute. having this release work from 33, 34, 35 weeks is far more ideal than leaving it until 36, 37, 38 weeks.
Yeah.
We're really up against anatomy and time leaving it that long. A lot of care providers will say, no, it's fine, don't worry, you don't have to do anything until 36, 37 weeks. True, a lot of babies will turn, but then if they don't, you're really running out of options.
Yeah, I think the same. I heard that a lot where women told, oh no, we'll wait. And then you've got really limited time, baby's bigger, it's going to be harder for them to shift.
Yeah. And even if baby was going to turn on their own anyway, again, this release work has so many amazing benefits for the woman's body, for getting baby into an ideal position, ready for birth as well.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. That's very interesting.
It's amazing. It's very cool. I love doing it. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rose, for sharing your story.
Thanks for having me. It was lovely to reminisce on 18 years ago.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Breech Birth podcast. These stories matter. They stretch what we think we know and bring voice to experiences that need to be heard. I'm so grateful to the women who have shared their experiences with us, raw, real, and full of wisdom. If this episode resonated with you, please follow, share, or leave a review. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Breech Birth Podcast. And if you have a breech story to share, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, may we continue to reclaim the narrative, one story at a time.